Welcome, welcome. We are going to get started just so that we stay on time. I can be long-winded, so I will do my best. Welcome to the Fall 2024 Staff Forum, hosted by the Danforth Staff Council. We have a great slate of speakers today. My name is Mandy Wertman. I'm one of the registrars over at the law school. I've been at WashU for 6 years. This is my 4th year on the council, so this will be my final year on the council. I am the chair. A little bit about us. If you navigate to our website, all of this information is on there. We were formed in 2016, so we're coming up on almost 10 years, to represent non-faculty and non-union Danforth staff members. We seek to collaborate with senior administration and human resources to broaden and strengthen the lines of communication on matters that impact staff and to provide advice to the administration on policy decisions. How we are structured, we have 6 committees and that comprises most of us. We have 34 members right now. We will have 35 soon, but we are typically 35 members. Our executive committee is myself as the chair. We have our co-chair Haley, our secretary, treasurer, and archivist. Elective officers are our executive committee and the chairs of the 6 subcommittees. Our committees are bylaws, which is how we govern ourselves and our committee. Communications committee, which is how you knew about today's forum. Community engagement committee, and some of those community engagement things will be coming up soon with some of the meet and greets that we'll talk about later. Events committee, which put on this wonderful forum for us today. It is a hard thing to do, and that committee does an amazing job. Human resources committee, which facilitates conversations with CFUHR, and our nominations committee, which is how you can get involved with the DSC. So I'm not going to go through everybody's name. There's 34 people. We are all on the website. Not all of us have headshots, but we'll get there. So we represent almost every portion of the Danforth campus right now. We have Brown School, Habif, Student Affairs, Facilities, Sam Fox, Undergraduate Admissions, Engineering, University Advancement, Police, Treasury Services. We have a Workday student representative. University Libraries, Office of Operations, Olin Business School, WashU Cares, CAPS, I think that's it. Disability Resources, WashU IT, Center for Teaching and Learning, and School of Law. So we hit almost every facet. We right now do not have an arts and sciences person, so think about that if you want to join the DSC in the future. We want to make sure that we're representing all of our staff. So visit our webpage. If you visit our webpage right now, the question, and you want to submit a question, that is also on our webpage right now. We will not be taking in-audience live questions like we have in the past forums if you've been here pre-COVID. We're glad to accept any live questions through our question and answer system. There are QR codes set up around the room. You can also navigate to our website. We have 3 people helping us facilitate that process. So Courtney Couchard, Kara Cummins, and Danny Humphrey will be reading our questions out loud. Stephanie Anderson and Anna Eggemeyer will also be helping us with the question portion. Regardless of whether you're here in the room or on Zoom, please submit your questions. If we can't get to your question today, we will archive them, we will get your question answered, and we will get back to you, okay? Our mission is to make sure that all of the questions are answered or that we get it to the right people. Are we excited? So in the back, we want to hear from you. So in the back, we have a little thing at the end. So as you're leaving the room, we have Post-its about what you would like to see in our spring forum in the future. We want to make sure that we are representing our staff and what you guys want to see. So today we have 3 presentations. Our first presentation is Digital Transformation and WashU AI, but first we're going to do a land acknowledgement with Anna Eggemeyer.
Thank you, Mandy. Washington University in St. Louis occupies the ancestral, traditional, and contemporary lands of the Osage, the Oto-Missouri, the Illinois Confederacy, and Quapaw nations and tribes, as well as many other tribes. We at Washington University in St. Louis benefit from the loss of land from Native nations and tribes, which had innumerable repercussions on their culture and population. We recognize their sovereignty was never ceded after unjust removal and encourage your own research on that removal, tribal sovereignty, and the history of the land where you reside. We promote the inclusion of tribal history, contemporary thoughts, and actions into your work. We affirm and support tribal sovereignty, history, and experiences by elders past, present, and 7 generations yet to come through their continued connection to this land. We must also respectfully acknowledge our debt to the enslaved people, primarily of African descent, whose labor and suffering built and grew the economy and infrastructure of a nation that refused to recognize their humanity. We recognize our debts to exploited workers past and present who suffered the horrors of transatlantic trafficking, chattel slavery here in St. Louis through the 1904 World's Fair, St. Louis Olympics, and later on dehumanization through segregation and Jim Crow laws. We mourn their loss of life, liberty, and opportunity. We acknowledge that the theft of labor is the theft of generational progress. Nearly all people of color have been robbed of the opportunity and wealth that their ancestors might otherwise have passed on to them. Thank you.
All right, so our first speaker is Christy Potthast, Manager of Financial Operations for Digital Intelligence and Innovation Accelerator. That is a mouthful. Green to advance.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Christy Potthast, and I'm with the DI2 Accelerator. I'm here today to talk with you about how ChatGPT can be used in your daily work. This tool is incredibly powerful, and my goal today is to share practical ways you can start using it to save time, boost creativity, and streamline your work. I'll show you how we at WashU can harness this tool to transform our daily tasks. Before we dive into the details, let's take a look at how quickly ChatGPT has grown in popularity. So look at these impressive numbers. Netflix took 3.5 years to reach 1 million users. Twitter took 2 years, and Instagram took 2.5 months. How long do you think it took ChatGPT to reach 1 million users? So the days was close, 5 days. So it took ChatGPT just 5 days. That's right, 5 days. This rapid adoption rate shows how quickly people have realized its potential. So these are just 3 of the main benefits of using ChatGPT: saving time, content creation, and idea generation. But they're by no means the only advantages. ChatGPT has countless applications depending on how you choose to use it. Now, let's talk about how you can get started with ChatGPT at WashU. At WashU, we offer a version of ChatGPT that is HIPAA and FERPA compliant. You can log in with your WUSTL key at gpt.wustl.edu. WashU's version is secure and perfect for handling sensitive data. There's also the OpenAI ChatGPT option, which you can use for less sensitive tasks. When using OpenAI's version of ChatGPT, it's important to note it is not compliant for handling sensitive data. Be cautious of what you input into the system. However, OpenAI's model does include image generation, which can be creative and fun. If you are interested in using advanced features like DALL-E, a personal subscription may be required. Finally, keep in mind that your inputs could potentially be used to improve the model. This is how OpenAI continues to enhance their tool. So for sensitive data, WashU's version is the safer choice. And this is a side-by-side comparison between WashU and OpenAI's versions of ChatGPT. Now that we've seen the key differences between the WashU and OpenAI versions, let's take a step back and talk about what ChatGPT actually means. The word chat highlights the tool's ability to engage with us and answer our questions using natural language. So what does GPT actually stand for? Well, it's a bit of a mouthful. Generative Pre-trained Transformer. Fancy, right? And no, it's not related to those transformers that turn into cars, though that would be pretty cool. Instead, it's fancy talk for a type of an AI model that's really good at transforming text into a different type of text based on the context, lots of text here, that you provided into the model. Of course, ChatGPT isn't the only tool OpenAI has created. Let's now talk about DALL-E, another powerful tool that's generating a lot of buzz for its ability to create images from text. Ever wonder why it's called DALL-E? The name is a fun mashup, a nod to the surrealist artist Salvador Dali, known for his mind-bending creativity, and WALL-E, the adorable Pixar robot. The name is a perfect blend of artistic imagination and cutting-edge AI. Basically, if DALL-E and WALL-E had a baby, it would be this AI that can create images from text prompts. And yes, that image was created using DALL-E. Now that we know where the name DALL-E comes from and how it blends creativity with technology, let's dive into some real-world examples. How can ChatGPT and tools like DALL-E actually help you in your daily work? Let's consider a few practical use cases. So, presentation preparation. One of the most common ways that I will use ChatGPT is for preparing presentations, like the one today. Instead of starting from scratch, I can prompt ChatGPT to help me organize key points and flesh out content, saving a lot of time. The other way that I use it is document drafting. So documents, whether it's an email, a meeting agenda, or even a complex memo of understanding, ChatGPT helps me get started and refine my ideas. It's especially useful when I'm short on time or need to create something that's professional and polished quickly. Image generation. And then there's DALL-E. I love this tool, which makes creating visuals for presentations super easy. If I need a specific image or visual concept, I can describe it to DALL-E, and it generates the image for me. Perfect for presentations or reports, and I don't have to do endless Googling. Here are a few tips I've learned along the way. Be specific with your questions, and if the response isn't exactly what you need, refine your prompt. Also, and this is the most important, use your own judgment to evaluate the results. So we're gonna go through some use cases. The first one is the presentation preparation. For this case, I asked ChatGPT to help me outline today's presentation. I started with a simple prompt: help me outline a presentation on how university staff can use ChatGPT in their daily work. That's it. Just a clear, straightforward request. In seconds, ChatGPT provided a full outline with suggestions for each slide. It didn't just give me an overview, it offered specific ideas for structuring the content. This was a huge time saver. Instead of spending hours figuring out the structure, I could focus more on refining the details. Once I had the initial outline, I realized I wanted something a bit simpler for the slides, maybe just the headings without all of the bullet points, for example. All I had to do was give ChatGPT a quick, refined prompt. Please collapse the bullets and leave only the heading-like slide. It's that easy. You just ask ChatGPT to make adjustments, and it responds in real time. It gave me exactly what I asked for, a clean, simple slide layout with only the key headings. What's great is how easy it is to refine things. You don't have to be overly precise with your wording. ChatGPT understands natural language, so a simple request like this can save you a lot of time formatting. The next use case is, we've all been there. You're extremely busy, you're juggling multiple tasks, and suddenly you realize you need to send a meeting invite with an agenda as soon as possible. The challenge was not just creating the invite, but making sure the agenda was clear and professional, all while working under time pressure. So this is how I did it. I gave ChatGPT a bit of context by telling it I needed an agenda for a specific meeting. What made this process even easier was that I didn't need to write everything from scratch. I just copied and pasted the key points from a Word document that I had already prepared. ChatGPT took those key points and with that context, generated a well-organized professional agenda in no time. It turned what could have been a 30-minute task into something I completed in minutes. This use case shows how ChatGPT can handle time-sensitive tasks when you already have some content, but you need to format it quickly and efficiently. Now, in this particular case, ChatGPT had generated a meeting that was like 90 minutes long, which nobody wants to do. And I said, I need you to adjust the time frame to 60 minutes, which people are still not wanting to do, but it quickly refined it and made the meeting agenda and explained like, this should be 5 minutes, this should be 10 minutes, etc. And it does it it's very fast. Okay, image generation. Now let's talk about DALL-E. It is one of my favorite tools. It does have some quirks. It's the AI image generator from OpenAI, and it can create the visuals based off of text prompts, like this one with DALL-E being on the struggle bus. So, for example, it sometimes misspells words and images. I was a little surprised that it picked up struggle bus and didn't have an issue with that. It also has a tendency to reinforce societal biases because of the data it's trained on. Another thing to note is that DALL-E can struggle with complex or highly detailed prompts. If you get too specific, it might not deliver the results you're expecting. So while it's a powerful tool, it's important to be aware of these quirks and to have a little fun experimenting with it. Sometimes the surprises can be a part of the creative process. So how does it work? It all starts with a simple text prompt. You describe what you want, whether it's a serene sunset or a futuristic cityscape. The key is how you frame the request. Once you enter the prompt, DALL-E goes to work. The AI processes the information and interprets it based on the training that it's had to generate an image that matches your description. After a few moments, you get your generated image. Sometimes it's exactly what you wanted, and sometimes you need to keep tweaking the prompt a bit. But either way, it's fun, and it's a creative process that allows you to visualize ideas almost instantly. So let's take a look at some prompt examples. So here are 2 examples of images generated by DALL-E. What's great is that you don't need to be super specific. You can play around with different styles, colors, or settings to get the image you want. It's very flexible, and part of the fun is seeing how DALL-E interprets your prompt. These are just 2 examples, but the possibilities are endless. So when it comes to generating images with DALL-E, the way you word your prompt makes all the difference. First, the more specific you are, the better. But again, I said don't be too specific. If you just say a sunset, DALL-E will give you something basic. But if you say a vibrant sunset with pink and orange hues over the ocean, you'll get a much richer result. Think about adding details like color, styles, or even settings. Do you want a vintage look or maybe something futuristic? These extra details help shape the image. Adjectives are your best friend. Describing things as bright, soft, or majestic can completely change the feel of the image. Finally, don't be afraid to experiment. If the first prompt doesn't give you what you're looking for, then try different phrasings or add more detail to refine the result. DALL-E responds well to creative input. It's all about finding the right balance between creativity and specificity. Once you get the hang of it, you'll be amazed at what you can create. So in conclusion, ChatGPT is a powerful tool that can streamline your work and boost productivity. I encourage you all to give it a try and see how it can make your tasks easier and perhaps even more fun. Yeah, I know, work can be fun sometimes. And here are some additional resources to help get you started. So first, I want to highlight the DI2 Accelerator, which is where I work. Our goal is to improve digital transformation across WashU, and we're here to support your innovation efforts, whether it's through tools like ChatGPT or other initiatives that help streamline your work and boost productivity. Another resource I want to point out is the CAPS program. For those of you who may not know, WashU employees can potentially take free classes utilizing this program. Please be certain to check out this opportunity. There's also a hands-on exercise that can walk you through like how to practice some ChatGPT prompts through the Leiden Learning and Innovation Center. And then additionally, learnprompting.org is a free resource that can walk you through how to craft better prompts. So those are some great resources to explore. I challenge each of you to give ChatGPT a try. Whether it's for drafting an email, brainstorming ideas, or even generating images. And don't just take my word for it. Use it and see how it works for you. I'd love to hear your thoughts, whether you love it, hate it, or feel somewhere in between. Your feedback is valuable, and I'm really curious to see how it fits in with your workflows and your daily work. So feel free to reach out and let me know how it goes. Thank you.
I am Danny Humphrey. I am from WashU Treasury Services, and I'm going to be reading a question from the audience. Okay. It says, regarding WashU's ChatGPT source, is there a planned update for the 2023 static data? And how often will it get updated?
That's a very good question. So the WashU version was recently updated to ChatGPT Model 4.0. I'm not entirely sure what year of data that is, but I can look into that and get you the answer.
Hello, I'm Anna Eggemeyer from McKelvey School of Engineering, and I'm going to be asking another question on behalf of everybody here. How is WashU mitigating the amount of energy its own AI tool is using? Generative AI is known for requiring and using massive electricity.
That's a very good question. I'll have to get back on that one.
We don't have any more questions here.
Okay.
Thank
All right.
you.
Thank you.
I used ChatGPT to help me today, too, just an FYI. Sometimes you need to get creative. Thank you. So our next speaker is Erin Culbreth. She's the Senior Associate Provost and Executive Director with the Student Sunrise Program. This one hits close to home as a registrar who will be in the system every single day. So, welcome.
Another technology update I'm going to give. Okay, where's the thing? Right here? Yeah, great. Okay. So thanks for letting me come speak with you today. I'm going to walk you through some of the changes that we're getting ready to go through as a university around a new student information system. So as said, I'm Erin, and I'm the leader of the Student Sunrise Program. It's a provost-sponsored initiative that includes several projects designed to replace many of our systems that currently support our academic areas that manage student records and student services, and over time the goal is to really improve the student experience at the university. So, Workday HR Finance is getting a sibling. This is sort of our cute note around some of the changes that are coming. So obviously the centerpiece of the Student Sunrise Program is our transition to Workday Student, which is going live over the course of this year. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But Workday Student will become our primary student information system as a university. It's replacing over 80 systems that we are currently operating to support our students' student records. It's a significant consolidation of technology, and yeah, it's a big change. So Let's talk a little bit first about what we mean by a student information system. So if you support students, if you use student data in any way, you are likely interfacing with one or more of these systems. So things that you might recognize, WebStack, WebFac. So WebStack is the student entry into SIS, WebFac the faculty entry. You might interact with course listings. Let's see, WooAchieve, which is a degree audit tool. There's a lot of systems across the university. This is really a high-level list. As I said, there's over 80 over our entire ecosystem that really perform these services. This really represents the backbone of the university's academic operations, holding student records, advising notes, course information, all those kinds of things. And it's also where students register for classes to take their courses while they're enrolled at the university. So you might ask why we're doing this. If you do interact with any of these systems, you're very aware how old they are. They were built in the 1990s. They are older than our students, much older than our students, older than some of us, not me, but some people if you're younger, and they're aging rapidly. They're really, they were built at a time when the university was much smaller, much more siloed. We didn't have as much interdisciplinary education. They really support the university of the past and are rapidly becoming barriers to sort of the university of the future. There's a lot of things that we can't do at an institution, which is really a shame. One example, you may not know this, but we have to have a registration lottery for students every semester because our systems cannot support the volume of students registering. So we have to put them in sort of smaller groups and schedule their registration in snapshots of time. With Workday, we won't have to do that. All seniors can register at the same time. In fact, they could hit the button at the same time to register. So we'll get a lot more capacity, a lot more speed with the system. And as a result of the current technologies, we have a ton of manual work. If you're at all in this space, you're doing a lot of emails, you're doing a lot of sort of reviewing of data, you're doing paper forms. There's just a lot of manual things that we can't do. And there's a lack of automation. So one great example is degree audit. Probably one of the most important things we do as an institution to ensure that our students have taken the right classes in order to earn the degree that we're getting ready to confer. That's largely a manual process right now. With Workday, all of that's connected together. Students will see where they are in their journey towards their degree. Advisors can see it. Registrars can see it. Really breaking down those walls, opening up the transparency, and having all of that in system is really going to be a win for everybody involved. So I talked a little bit about some wins, but it's more than just technology. It's really, we've taken the time under this project to really rethink how we operate and how we serve our students. As I said at the beginning, right now we have a lot of barriers based on technology, and there's a lot of things we can't do that really we need to do as a university of this complexity. So having new tools for registration, for instance, we can now in Workday, we'll be able to set aside seats in courses. So if, for instance, a department wants to set aside 5 seats in a certain set of classes just for seniors, or you want to make a class only available to students who are majoring in that particular program. Those are new tools that we'll have as an institution that we just don't have right now. And we're also taking this opportunity to really create some better consistency for our students. Leave of absence right now is a pretty difficult process and very fractured across the institution. Getting consistency around how students would be put on a leave of absence, the policies around leave of absence, really a win for students and really a win for the schools and departments. So we really wanted to use the opportunity of this project to focus on policies and practices such as that. Okay, so who's impacted? A lot of people are impacted by this change. Every single student at the university including the med school, including CAPS, including arts and sciences, graduate, PhD, undergrad. Every single student is going to be impacted by this change. That's really the largest impacted group, but their parents might be impacted if they pay tuition through Workday. Anyone who teaches students, anyone who advises students, anyone who analyzes student data, all of those populations, which is a significant amount of us, are going to be impacted by this change. And yes, it is the same Workday that you are using right now to do things like manage your time off or look at your paycheck or put in an expense report. It is the same system. So what everyone's logging into today will be the exact same system that everyone will log into once we start turning on, and we are turning on, pieces of the student functionality. So if you're a heavy user of Workday Student, some of this might look familiar. Because it's one integrated system, there's a lot of overlaps in how everything works. That's actually a good thing long term because it gives us the ability to really hook up data across the institution and pull a lot of information around out of the same system. So things like academic units, the School of Arts and Sciences is an academic unit. That's an academic unit in the context of student for holding programs of study and student records. It's also significant in the context of HR to manage sort of supervisory orgs, and also in the context of finance to manage money. So all these things overlap and connect. So there's a lot of interplay between the HR finance pieces of Workday and student. So I said we're starting to turn it on, and this is a little bit about what it's going to look like over the year. We're actually live right now. There's a small piece of the system that's on. There's about 177 folks in the university, mainly registrars and folks in the departments, yay, that are in the system right now. They're really working on courses. We've renumbered over 40,000 courses, moving from 3-digit to 4-digit structure. So they're doing some cleanup there. They're setting up fall of 25 classes, so putting in the courses and course sections that we'll be offering as an institution. So that went live about a month ago and is going really well. The next go live is really the big one, and that's the one highlighted here in red. That's February 17th. That's when everyone else will start using pieces of the system. So students, faculty, instructors, everyone will start getting in there at that point in time. Students are going to be asked to do some updates of their information, and advising for fall of 25 that occurs in spring will happen out of Workday. So the students will register next spring in Workday for the first time. Instructors, you'll see, are kind of at the end. So it's really a slow roll. It takes a full year to turn on a system of this size, and it really follows the flow of the academic calendar. So faculty, really the last thing that happens is the degree checkout, but faculty will grade in Workday for fall of 25, and then we'll do degree conferral out of Workday in December of 25. So that's really the last thing that happens to turn everything on and switch it all over. So we'll be off of all of those 80 systems December of next year. All right, so how are we preparing people? This is a big change. It's a big change for, as I've said, a large population of folks across the university. And we really learned a lot from what went well, and things did go well with the Workday HR Finance implementation, and also maybe what was challenging and how we could course correct as we've gone through the student implementation. So first, a key component of our readiness approach was to really engage those that would be impacted super early. So we've been engaging students, faculty, staff, really from the start of this project, and helping us design the system, giving us feedback, doing some testing. There's about 300 people that are readiness ambassadors that have been working with us from the start. So that's been really helpful for our team, and also helpful for them to be part of it. Haley was someone who's been involved for a long time, to really have their voice in our decisions, and also kind of get their feedback as we've gone along. Bottom left, sneak peeks. That's something we're particularly proud of. I don't think a lot of universities do this kind of thing, but we've done webinar series over the past 10 months or so that are open. They're recorded, so welcome you to go at our website and look at them. But it's basically an overview of sort of the general topics and changes that are coming. So taking a lens from advising and advisors, what kinds of tools are you going to have in Workday? How will it look? How will maybe data look a little bit different? And we've had really positive feedback from those who participated. We've had over 4,000 participants in the sneak peeks. So really excited about that. I think these kinds of things will help make this change just a little less challenging. It's still going to be hard, but everything we can do to kind of give information early, we think it was really smart. Training is starting. So those 177 registrars, course section managers have gotten their training. They did in-person training to learn how to set up a course and sort of manage courses. And more training's coming. We'll do some more for advisors, instructors, a little bit for students, although we feel like students are probably going to be fine. It's pretty intuitive, and they tend to just explore anyway and figure it out. And then the last thing I want to flag is something that's coming up in a few weeks. If you haven't heard about it, I am sure you will, because we're going to have tons of marketing and tons of information around campus. But it's something we're calling mock enroll. So it's a mock registration. It's focused mainly for students and advisors, but really anyone can walk into any of these events and log into a practice tenant, poke around at your information, practice registering, practice looking up courses. It'll be really helpful to kind of for us to really see how Campus First experiences the system, but a really good way for especially students to get a little early peek and an early practice before they're in there officially in February. All right, the last thing we've done, next to last thing we've done, is we have a ton of information on our website. If you've not looked at our website, sunrise.woostrel.edu or sunrise.washu.edu, there's a ton of information in here by persona. So if you're an advisor, we've aggregated sort of the top level information that you need to know now. If you are an instructor, if you're a student, if you're a registrar, we'll have persona-based pages of information that we'll keep updated, really to give everyone guidance on what's happening next, maybe some things you can do to prepare, and a ton of information about the changes that are happening. There's a lot of changes, not just the system. There's a lot of changes with how student records are going to look. There's a lot of changes with how courses are going to be displayed, a lot of changes with data. There's a lot of other things that are going to be changing for the university. And so the more you can kind of do some of your own research in advance, the better prepared folks are going to be. Other things that we've got is obviously other support. So in addition to our project website, on the Workday at WashU's website, which is shared with our Workday HR and Finance partners, is support materials. So this would be think like line-by-line instructions about how to do a specific task. There's some videos, because a lot of people learn by videos. Other people want to sort of see brief narratives, step-by-step. There's e-learnings. We're really trying to meet people where they are and give them as many options as possible to learn about the system and get help. And then there's also calling our team. So support team hotline, same one shared with HR and Finance. We are holding virtual office hours right now with the schools to sort of be on site and answer their questions as they're working on these courses. And then ticketing, as you get in here, putting in tickets to ask us how to do something if you're having trouble or a problem or a security issue. Those kinds of things are also going to be available. So that was a lot. Just leave you with a few things about what you can do now if this is a space that you work in. One thing I should say, this is a big transition. There's going to be bumps. There's no way it's going to be completely smooth. Everyone is really comfortable and familiar with the current systems we've been using. You may not like them. They may not be doing all the things that we should we really should have as an institution, but they're easy for folks to navigate because it's really what we've been using as an institution for so long. So changing that is really hard. It looks and feels different in Workday. Folks are pretty familiar with it, just given experience as employees and logging in, so that helps a bit. But once you get into this space and start doing things like courses and managing student records, it's just very different from what we have now. So we're all learning together. Our students are going to be learning together. Their advisors are going to be learning with them. Registrars are learning. Instructors are still or will be learning. There's not a lot of experts around campus, everything about Workday. Even our team learns something every day. And so this is really a change journey that we're going to go on together and support each other. And so there's a lot of just patience, grace, ask the questions, look at the resources, and really take extra time. If we're encouraging students, if you don't plan what you're going to register for until the night before registration, maybe this isn't the year to do that. Maybe you should look ahead and really do your planning a few weeks out or even a month out, so you really can have time to get in the system and do what you need to do. Other things, if you haven't watched a sneak peek, really encourage you to go back and do that. We've sort of curated it down. You can find different moments in the session to sort of jump to topics that might be of particular interest. Really great information out there. And then become familiar with your reps in your schools. All that information is on our website if you want to ask questions of folks who've been involved in the project. There are plenty of people that you can ask. And come to Mock and Roll. We'll have sessions around campus. Every school is hosting at least one. It's over a 2-week time period. So lots of opportunities to walk in and log in and see the system. All right. Questions?
Hi, we have a question. How will Workday Student affect me as I'm not a student-facing staff? How can we help?
I love that question. So I think how can we help is those staff or folks that are your friends and your colleagues, give them a little extra emotional support. Their work will take longer for the next year plus because they get familiar with the system. So I think that's really important. I think it's important for the entire community to know what's going on with this transition. This is fundamental to our mission. We're talking about everything we do to really support the academic journey of students, programs of study, majors, minors, registration, records, tuition and fees. This is a pretty fundamental system to the institution. And so just sort of paying attention to what's going on, reading our record articles, poke around on our website, but mainly give support to your colleagues.
Okay, we have another question. Is there a reason WashU chose to go with Workday, a finance and human resource system, to build a student information system as opposed to working with a company that is well established in higher ed, such as Illusion Banner? I don't know if I'm mispronouncing that. Salesforce or like Genzabar, et cetera.
So Workday Student is a vended student product. So we've not built it. It actually is a product that Workday sells, and over 60 universities are using it for their student information system. So yes, there are other products out there. We went with this institutional decision was made a while back to both have a product in the cloud, which was really important for a lot of reasons, not only security, but just sort of where technology is going. But we also did want a fully integrated product. There's a lot of long-term wins to having HR information, student information, finance information, grant information, all in one system. Not having to manually connect those data elements is a significant win for the institution long-term. Yes, Workday Student's newer than some of those other products, but I have to say, given our current products, and which are homegrown and old, there's a lot of wins with this system. My team has not seen a lot of gaps in functionality, and we're pretty excited about where we'll go. It's not perfect. It's still evolving. It may not behave exactly how we prefer in spots, but it's definitely a product that's established and also rapidly improving.
What is the plan to retire the existing SIS core systems, as in when Workday Student has fully gone live, will everyone's SIS access be simply cut off?
Eventually. Yeah, that's something we're working on. You know, it's nuanced. So the go live is, as we said in that slide back, is a rolling go live. And so we'll be finishing up this academic year in all of the SIS systems. So while we'll start registration in spring for fall, all the students that graduate next spring are going to graduate out of SIS. And so there's an overlap between sort of old and new. So there will be some access that stays. There's a tail end to the current infrastructure, but it won't necessarily be updated. So Workday becomes the system of record next spring. So we'll true up some information just to kind of allow us to finish out operations. But roughly fall of 2025 is when we'll start sunsetting access to things like WebStack and WebCursal and things that you're familiar with. More details will come. We're doing more specific communications. Carrie, our registrar, is working with the schools on some of that planning. But yes, eventually it will be, security will be cut off. Maybe not like suddenly, but yes.
I have another question. Why do the courses need to be listed so far in advance? For example, fall 2025 courses need to be complete and finalized by December 1st, 2024. That seems very early to have all the details for courses finalized.
So I don't think they have to all be finalized exactly by December 31st, but what we're doing with course setup largely follows the current operational calendar. Some schools have sort of different time periods that they might push courses live. I know law school kind of lags a little bit for some other reasons, but largely we're this particular year we're asking course managers and registrars to work a little bit ahead. That's a lot. There's a lot of sort of reasons for that, but the primary one is we want to give our students as much runway as possible. And so when we turn on the system in February, even though registration doesn't happen until April, advisors and students are going to kind of bounce around a bit, trying to figure out how to sort of aggregate and search their courses and work in the system. So the more complete that data is for that fall 25 registration, the easier it's going to be for our community. And having that sort of put in more last minute, we thought would be more disruptive. So yes, we have asked for things to happen slightly earlier than typical, but it's not wildly off the usual schedule.
Another question. How long will the Student Sunrise project team be in place after go live to help others through their transition?
Yeah. So the project, so the last piece of go live is September of 25. And then there's a sort of typically a stabilization period. So we'll be a project team through December of 25, but we will also have ongoing a permanent group to support the campus with Workday Student, much like there is for HR and finance. So there'll be a team of folks that will be here not only to support campus and answer questions, but also keep improving the product. Workday, one benefit about Workday I haven't said is because it's that cloud product, it's constantly being improved. It pushes out, the company pushes out updates every 6 months with new functionality, new improvements. And so that was another reason, back to one of the previous questions, of why we went with this vendor, because we know the product won't get stagnant and we can continue to evolve and use the product to align with our academic mission. This university is in constant change. Right now, these are the sort of our priorities, but over 10, 15 years, we might have different academic priorities. So having a product that was dynamic and allowed us to sort of flex to our priorities was really, really important. So we'll have a team that is constantly doing that and constantly improving the system.
Is the student Workday support going to be a different number than the HR/finance one?
No, so same number. Behind the scenes, we'll sort of push the ticket to the right spot. And the reason is there's overlaps. Someone might ask a question thinking it's a question for the HR team, but it's actually maybe a question for the student team, because we're really at this intersection of sort of instructors and courses and all of the data. There's a connection point, and so we'll funnel everyone to one spot, and behind the scenes, we'll put it to the right team to answer.
All right, one final question. Are you planning to host a virtual mock enroll option for staff? I am fully remote and not able to attend the in-person event.
Yeah, so look on our website. All the mock enroll events are up there. There are a couple of online virtual mock enrolls that folks can drop into, yes.
Okay, sorry, Erin, I've got one more for you.
Go for it.
As a leader of this project, what are you most excited / worried about for the go live?
Wow. Worried about everything. But I'm supposed to worry about everything. Yeah, so I am really excited about shifting to something a lot more modern. I think, we're doing our students a disservice with the systems we're providing them right now. Not only are they not mobile friendly, but there's a lot of quirks and barriers to them engaging with it. And there's a lot of just weird stuff we have to do to keep everything running. And so I think while difficult at first, people will really appreciate the modern nature of the system. There's automation, but it's not complete automation, which I think is appropriate in this space. And I think people will appreciate over time the fact that it is constantly improving. I think challenges, it's not a menu-based product. It's sort of a search engine-based product, which I think is tricky for people at first. So there's some big changes that folks need to make to sort of get familiar with the system. And then I think it's going to take us a long time to stabilize. The challenge with the academic year, much like the financial year, is you only do things a couple times during that year. And so like the first time we do degree audit and graduation is one thing, but we're not going to do it again for like several months. And so it's going to take folks several times just to get comfortable. That's just normal with change. We just don't have, some activities don't happen frequently. So I think our stabilization for student is probably going to take 2 academic years. So yes, I think everyone expects this spring to be challenging because it's the first time there's a registration. I think people are understanding that fall of 25 will be challenging. But it's going to be hard all the way until spring of 27. And that's a long time to ask people to kind of deal with something new. Now it'll get better with time. Every month it'll get better and better and better. But I'm conscious of all the changes, and I think that's just hard.
All right, well, that concludes all the questions we're getting in. Thank you very much for speaking with us.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
My mantra as a registrar is to approach with positivity. As someone who uses the system every day. And we have Jessica on our council who works with Workday Student. So our next presenters, first we'll have John Anazu. I'm gonna hold up his book for everybody to see. Rick Parker has assured me that there is a whole display with some signed copies over at the bookstore for anybody who is interested in purchasing this. Oh, I have both mics on, thank you, sorry. Anybody who is interested in purchasing the book, this is my copy. So our next 2 speakers, John and then Dean Wild, will be talking about Election Day and it being 2 weeks from today. And we have a lot of events going on campus, but we've also had some tumultuous things happen in the past couple of months with some other political things that are going on around campus. So John is Dr. Sure, Nazu, is going to be talking to us about how we can respectfully have conversations. And then Rob Wild will then come in and we'll talk about student protesting and what some of those things going on with that as well. So I'd like to have John come on up.
All right, thanks. It's great to be with you all. Thanks for all that you do to make this university work. I'm gonna give you a little bit of an overview. This will not be sort of election specific. This will be zooming out and having us think sort of how to think through these things at Washington University and at the Thanksgiving dinner table and other parts of your life and my life. It'll be a little bit of an overview of this book, Learning to Disagree. You can think of this as it's a story-based account of teaching law, and the big sneaky theme is to try to convince you that even though most of you think lawyers are part of the problem, we can actually be part of the solution to some of our frayed discourse. And so it's an account of my classroom teaching at an unnamed university that may or may not be WashU, and the exchanges I have with my students, and then all the ways that I screw it up in my personal life with my family and neighbors and friends. But I wrote it in a desire to be engaging, and it is story-based, so it's not an academic book, I promise you. But I want to start off actually with some fan mail that I receive. My friend John Hendricks, who teaches in the Sam Fox School, is a children's book illustrator, and it turns out that if you write for kids, you hear from the best of humanity. I do not write for kids, so here are some real letters that I've received. These are all from a piece I wrote in USA Today a few years ago, basically arguing that we should try to treat each other more kindly in our politics. Thank you for the hilarious rant. Academics like you walk tall in the corridors of power around the world, so you have a large responsibility for creating stupid governments. You're liable for spreading hate-filled, spurious material and being a tool of global oppression. You are guilty of breaking the Constitution and international criminal laws, and you will be held to account. Your essay is nothing but self-serving BS. And all of these, again, for an article that basically argued for a little more kindness across the political aisle. And tellingly, I received these from people from both major parties, both angry at me for the message that I had presented. And I don't get the worst of it. My colleague Kim Norwood in the law school, after she wrote a piece post-Ferguson on CNN had to shut down the website because of all the racist slurs that were in the comments section. And my friend, the late columnist Mike Gerson, used to write a political column for the Washington Post, and he needed to take a break from the churn of the political columns. So one week he decided to write about his kids going off to summer camp and what it was like to drop off his kids as a parent. And the comments were making fun of his family and saying they hoped his kids drowned. So this is where we are today, and you might not feel it as acutely in the day-to-day, but you sense with me that something's wrong. You see it online, you see it in some of the encounters you read, and it highlights the big challenge that we have. So part of the challenge is we are deeply divided over things that matter. This is not about ice cream preferences in sports teams. This is about what does it mean to be a human being? What is human flourishing? What's the future of our country? What's equality? What's justice? These are big questions, and we are deeply divided about them. We aren't going to resolve these differences in your lifetime or mine. And so both the practical and the political challenge that leaves us with is we need to find common ground even when we don't agree about the common good. Now, that's a pithy statement that I worked a long time to get right, but it's also a really hard statement. So as you're falling asleep tonight, think back about what this actually means and calls us to, finding common ground when we disagree over those major issues about where we're headed as a country, as a community, as a species, and that's the challenge before us. Are there limits to figuring out how to navigate these differences? Yes, there are limits. Every society, every institution, every university sets limits, and it says that there are some things that are beyond the pale. We are not going to tolerate certain acts of violence and certain perspectives or certain demonstrations that go beyond what we accept as a community. But the problem for many of us today is that we have moved beyond the obvious boundaries of our community, the kinds of people who are given employment at Washington University, the kinds of students and teachers we accept to be part of this community. And we have transitioned from thinking the other side is wrong to thinking that they're evil. And once you start to see your political opponent not just as wrong, but as evil, it's very hard to figure out how you walk that back. When you think someone's wrong, even deeply wrong, even about an issue that really matters, you hope dearly they lose at the polls and that their policies are not enacted. But if you think they're wrong, you can still sit next to them in an auditorium, work alongside them, share a meal with them. If you think they're evil, your goal is to minimize their influence on your life and on everyone else's life. So moving from wrong to evil is dangerous, and we've seen that increasingly in our online interactions, in our politics with the people around us. And so I want to spend just a few minutes talking through some of the ideas that I set out in Learning to Disagree as a response to this. Now, if you end up looking at the book, you'll see that one of my big takeaways is there is no checklist answer. This is all about practicing skills that take a very long time to figure out. And it means screwing them up and making mistakes with real human beings in our community. So you can't just get it by reading a book, but since this is a time-constrained talk, I'm going to give you a checklist and then ask you to think about the going beyond the checklist to figuring this out in our own lives. So how do we think about learning to disagree? I'm going to give you sort of 3 sets of principles and then 5 practical tips, and then I'll be done. And I would say I'm standing between you and food, but that's actually Rob, so I feel quite comfortable being next to last. So what do we do? First of all, can we think about how to lower the stakes? Part 1 of this is choosing your battles. There are some people, maybe no one in this room, but some people out there that think they are compelled to share their views about every issue that comes across their social media, across their news feeds. That's not a very practical or pragmatic thing to do. Most of us don't have expertise about most things in the world. So pick a couple things you really care about and learn deeply about them and share about those, and then leave it to someone else to fight the battle. And then as you engage with these issues, whether online or in person or with your family, start by setting and finding common ground. So do ordinary things. Don't meet someone and start talking about politics or race or religion in your first conversation. Have lunch or talk about your common interests first. That will help lower the stakes. Second, how do we learn empathy? This starts with seeing the person behind the problem. So before I was teaching at WashU, I practiced law as a government attorney at the Pentagon, and most of my clients were quite senior. And I was preparing a 3-star general for cross-examination, and he was getting very angry and very defensive with me. And I was a young attorney, and I was a little insecure in responding to his anger. And then it occurred to me in the moment, this is a man who has tremendous power and tremendous authority, but he is probably terrified about going into court, maybe for the first time, and having someone question his judgment, professionalism, and character. And if I can just kind of see behind the 3 stars on each shoulder and realize this is a human being who's scared, that we might actually make more progress here. And that flipped the preparation when I could see the person behind the problem in front of me. And then also realizing at the same time that even as we seek to find and meet empathy, that we won't always be able to fully empathize with someone else. We're not going to know what it's like to be in someone else's shoes from another culture or another race or gender or perspective, that our set of experiences can only take us so far. So we can both work as much as we can to see a human being, and then also be a little humble in our ability to get there all the way and recognize that there are some experiences that are going to be outside of even our imagination fully to understand. And then how do we know when to engage? Building trust first. So I hear sometimes, especially with family issues, and I have a lot of students coming into my office saying, it's going to be really hard at Thanksgiving or going home to see people. And they sometimes say, I feel like I don't even know this person anymore. And that's probably because they don't know this person anymore. Because even though you have spent a lot of time through shared memories and shared experiences, if you have a few years of distance, especially in today's environment where you're formed by different news sources and different social media experiences and different values and friend groups, then when you get back in person, you actually have to do some trust building first. And so delay maybe the more in-depth conversations until you've built some trust, even with people you already know. And then when you are ready or committed to having that hard conversation, go in with a full tank. So go in on a good night's sleep and rested and ready, maybe in the ideal sense, expecting to be offended, right? Knowing this is going to be a hard topic and they're probably not going to say things just the way you want to hear them, and that's okay because you're ready for this and you're ready to take some hits. And maybe in that first response, rather than just jumping back, if you can absorb some comments with curiosity or even a little vulnerability, that might actually be enough to shift the conversation ever so much. So those are some of the basic principles. And again, in the book itself, I mostly get at these through storytelling, encounters with students, student protests. You're going to hear more about that in a minute. I'm a scholar of protests, and I spend a lot of time advising protesters. I generally like them until they come at me, which has happened a couple times. So there is a balance to protest culture, but know that when you engage, you can often walk a line that isn't fully aggressive and isn't fully passive either. So 5 applications here about how to do this, and then I'll be done. The first one, slow down. So if you're going too fast, I'm a type A efficiency-driven lawyer, and my whole day is going from one thing to another and moving as quickly as I can to get things done, and I will often miss the person right in front of me. So what does it mean to slow down and realize there is a human being in front of me and I need to pause and recognize the complexity there? So a brief story of confession that I share in the book. When I was practicing law, it was a time in life when I was billing hourly, so every hour that I worked was more money for our family at a time when we had no other income and a mortgage and health insurance and other things to pay for. And so I was working one Saturday morning, billing some hours, and my wife and I got into one of those arguments that some of you know are going to take a long time to resolve, and it was going to go on. And so we spent 3 or 4 hours with the fake apologies and kind of ignoring each other. And then finally, we get through it, and we realize we're ready to move on. We finally reconciled over this argument. And then I looked up at my wife, and I said, "Do you know how much money this argument just cost us?" Which was not the right thing to say, and was not a good example of slowing down enough to see the person in front of me. So when the point is obvious. You can't instrumentalize everything in relationships, and when you forget that, things do not go well. So slow down with the people around you. Second, listen to understand. It's rarely a bad idea to say, "Tell me more," to reserve judgment when you hear something that sounds off-putting or you don't understand, at least to follow up and try to gain clarity before passing judgment and pausing the conversation a bit sometimes. It doesn't mean you're going to agree, but it might mean that you will have a better sense of where the person is coming from. So listen to understand. Third, balance kindness and courage in your words. This is particularly acute right now on a university campus, and we're not the only one dealing with this. But as you know, out in society, the First Amendment gives you a right to say almost anything to almost anyone. WashU, with a norm that approximates the First Amendment, encourages that as well. But just because you can say something doesn't mean that you should. And we're free to say all kinds of awful and life-destroying and terrible things to other human beings. But that's not a great way to go about life. It's not a great way to build a university. So balancing that kindness. And then in the other direction, and I see this with students a lot today, there's a reticence to speak up at all. There's a sense, if I say the wrong thing or say the wrong position in the wrong way, I'm going to get jumped on, I'm going to get yelled at, people are going to stigmatize me. And so at the same time that we have this need to balance or to express kindness, there is a need for courage in speech. And you can't shortcut that without a kind of trust in what you're trying to do together. So I'll give you a quick example here of how we eventually got there in one of the courses that I taught. I was a couple of years ago taught an undergraduate seminar, and it was a political philosophy class, so mostly dense texts and discussions. And then at the end of the semester, with 2 classes left, I said to the students, we're going to mix it up, and instead of our last 2 sets of readings, this was a small seminar with about 12 students, I said, each of you is going to come to class and share 5 minutes on an issue that you care passionately about that you would be terrified to share publicly at WashU. And then I'm going to spend the next 15 minutes grilling you on every possible counter-objection I can think of in front of your classmates and peers. So there was this collective thud of lack of enthusiasm for this, and yet we spent the next 2 classes doing this exercise, and I heard some pretty wild things from all of these students. but they proved to me and themselves that they were able to do this, and it worked really well, and they were actually quite excited after it was done. And one of them came to me afterwards and said, "Professor, this was great. You should do this class again, except next time you should make the entire class just this." And I said to him, if on day one I had told you all this was the assignment, every single one of you would have dropped this class, right? And the point here is that you can only get to this really tricky balance and blend of kindness and courage that if you have taken the time and the work to build a community. That's easier to do in a 12-person seminar than it is in an institution as complex as this one with thousands and thousands of employees and students and faculty, but there's no shortcutting to the building of trust within a community. Fourth, recognize your blind spots. We all have them. A lot of them are just straight up bias. I'm a half Japanese American who often passes as white, so I'll be in very white spaces where I'll hear very racist comments, and those are blind spots from the people uttering them. Some of our blind spots are just lack of awareness or understanding, and in many cases we are going to need other people to tell us about those blind spots. So an example here from my own life, I have a friend who teaches at Duke, and he's a black law professor, and we were grabbing lunch one summer, and after lunch I was dropping him off back in front of the law school, and there was a sign there that said 10-minute parking zone. And so we pulled up, and I was talking with him about the end of our lunch, and the campus police officer pulled up immediately and looked at us, and we were both dressed pretty casually. It was the summer, and the cop said, "You two are leaving right now, aren't you?" And I'm not great. My brother's a police officer. I'm not great with cops. So I was ready to turn to this guy and tell him to come back in 9 minutes and 30 seconds and ask again. And as I'm turning to do this, my friend is saying, "No problem, officer," palms up. I'm getting out of the car now, opening the door, leaves the car and walks away. This is 2015 or 16, and I teach criminal law and write about protests. So I'd been spending a lot of time writing about Ferguson and post-Ferguson protests and criminal policing of minority communities. And I had a sense that I thought I had a good handle on some of this stuff. And so I called my friend pretty upset and said, "Why did you just walk away? Why did you let that cop push you around like that?" And he said, "The fact that you would ask the question shows to me that you still don't understand what's going on here." He said, "If we'd been in downtown Durham, where we have black business owners and black elected officials, I might have taken more time with the downtown Durham police. But on this campus, Duke, with a set of norms and culture here, that guy doesn't have a category for me as a law professor, and he's got a gun, and I'm not gonna mess around with that." And so this was a blind spot for me, and it took a friend to very clearly help me unpack that. And we all need these friends to keep telling us what we don't know. So recognize your blind spots. And then finally, practice forgiveness. That we are in a university, which almost by definition is supposed to be a learning environment where you and I and the people around us are going to screw things up and make mistakes, especially the students, right? The students are here to learn things they don't know, and they're going to make mistakes. And so can we work with grace and forgiveness for one another? And it turns out that the university is not the only place where we learn and screw up. The rest of life is as well. So in order to do this, you're going to need to know two things. One, that you are capable of being forgiven, that you're not the sum total of your worst mistake, and no one wants to be plagued with that, but also that you need forgiveness, that you're not perfect, that you are also going to screw it up, and you're not going to be the one who always gets it right. So those are some applications to think about, to take maybe to Thanksgiving or 2 weeks from now or whatever it is that next creeps up in your life. These are, in some ways, very ordinary things. I mean, I study complex issues of law, and none of these are complex issues of law. They're pretty ordinary, but they're very hard to put into practice. And they are individual commitments, but they're commitments that eventually have to form into practices and habits. And it's only when a bunch of us start doing this in our own lives and with each other in actual institutions that we'll actually see social change. I hope that you will find opportunities in the days to come, maybe even here as we lead up to this election and the days and weeks after, to put this into practice and to find places where you can lower the stakes and lengthen the conversations, and that together we might find more opportunities to see not only the challenges but also the possibilities of our differences, particularly in a place like this one where all of the messiness and complex stuff that we're trying to do in and out of the classroom is a way to make life more interesting and sometimes maybe even a little more beautiful. So thanks so much for having me, and over to Rob.
Jessica?
You want to sit up here while I talk? Or you want to come up from the top?
Yeah, John, if you want to come up and take a seat, Rob will, and then we'll do Q&A. I was going to say, don't go far. So next up we have Rob Wild, who is going to talk about the student perspective. All right.
So thank you so much. And I was not told when I agreed to do this right away that I had to follow John in this. And so this is going to be a little sleepier, this part of this. But what I will say about John, he and I have known each other for a long time, and I love reading his writing. He's known as a very good First Amendment scholar. And what I think about this talk that you just gave, this is really like practical applications of the First Amendment, and really important for us to hear that right now. So what I was asked to come talk about is a little bit less exciting. It's about what the university, kind of in follow on to this, how does the university think about freedom of expression on the Danforth campus, particularly as it relates to the student experience? And what the heck happened last year, and how did we respond to that both in the moment and in, going into this year? So I have a few slides, and then we can mostly leave things open for Q&A. Just want to remind everybody that, so I've been at this campus. I came here as a student in 1989. I've been back working here since 1999. We've had protests here all the time. In fact, last year might have been the record. I think we had 38 different demonstrations on campus that happened throughout the year, and that's normal. I think universities like WashU expect that to happen and are designed for that. In fact, we have schools and programs that are teaching students about civil disobedience and how to find their voice and learn about activism, and so it's not surprising at all. These are just some snapshots that I've taken in the past couple years about different demonstrations that I've been at. I have no idea how I got the Peabody, anti-Peabody people to smile for that one, but the other ones, maybe there's just different flavors of protests. What I do want to say, interestingly, in this era that we live in, the chancellor of the university, Andrew D. Martin, has thought a lot about this issue of freedom of expression in the context of higher education. In fact, this was something he would often speak about when he was at the University of Michigan. And when he came back to WashU, he had he initiated a number of blog posts, and one of his, this was before last year, talked about the university's philosophy on freedom of expression. And I highlight this because this is what he was saying about freedom of expression before the fall of 2023. And that is a point that I very much agree with him on, which is lively intellectual conversations are as commonplace as comments about the weather. As chancellor, it's important that I help cultivate a campus community in which everyone has a voice, the freedom to exercise their rights and duties to speak out against injustice and inequity. And this last highlighted part is the part we had the most difficulty with last year, and an opportunity to learn from one another without insult or intimidation. And I think if you talk to most students on our campus last year, they felt that they witnessed a lot of insult and intimidation last year. And that's where the university really got pressured into thinking about what levels of free speech we're going to allow on campus and how we are thinking about this. And I just also want to say, being back in this room, I don't know if any of you were able to attend, but on September 4th, Chancellor Martin and Professor Lee Epstein, one of John's colleagues, sat in these two chairs and did a talk about freedom of expression. Ironically, there was a protest during the talk that became part of the talk, and they addressed the activists in the room, and it kind of became an interesting commentary. But one of the things I remember both of them talking about is this is not a fixed moment. Like, we are still, as a country and as college campuses, trying to define coming into this academic year what the boundaries are for freedom of expression. And if you look around the country, I'm going to talk about WashU, but if you look around the country, you see very different approaches that campuses are beginning to take in terms of what is allowable and what's not allowable. And I think this is a really kind of an interesting and critical moment for us as we think about this. At WashU, we really have two policies in place around demonstrations and disruptions. The first one, and I have the QR code up here if you want to read all 14 pages, but it's called the University Policy on Demonstrations and Disruptions. This was a policy that was written after the 2005 sit-in that happened in the Office of Undergraduate Admissions. I think that was about a living wage for our contract employees. And the goal of this policy was to really lay out expectations that student demonstrators should have when engaging in a demonstration, and being super clear about things that were allowed and things that weren't allowed. Obviously, coming out of the 2005 sit-in, disrupting business operations of the university was highlighted as a violation. But really, this has a lot to do, and you see similar policies on other campuses, with preventing a faculty member from speaking, or preventing a speaker from speaking, or an audience from hearing a talk. Another policy that's relatively new and has a very sexy name is called the Danforth Campus Facilities Access Policy. Probably do need a new acronym for this. This is a new policy that was announced in January. It's actually not a new policy. It's a policy that took about 43 different policies that were in existence across the Danforth campus and put them in one place. One of the things we heard from many in our community last year was a lack of clarity about where to go to find information about posting flyers and reserving space and amplified sound and camping. And all of those rules were out there, but you basically would have to do probably a 2 to 3 week internet evaluation of our policies to figure out where all the policies were. And we had a couple of pockets on the Danforth campus where there would be one policy for one building and another policy for another building. And I'll pick on my good friends in Sam Fox in engineering for being the poster children for having two different varied expectations around posting policies. So the idea was to get everything in one place, and we put it all in one place, and it's now in this lovely policy called the Danforth Campus Facilities Access Policy. We also, in this policy decided to call out spaces on this campus that commonly are used for demonstrations and disruptions, and be super clear that we expect them to happen here. So if you feel like you're planning a demonstration and you want to do it, here are a bunch of locations that we certainly encourage you to go. Brookings Quadrangle, Tisch Park, Mudfield, and Edison Courtyard. Part of the thinking around these locations is these are locations that are fairly public, that if somebody disagrees with the content of a demonstration, they could walk around it and not have to see it. And these are the least disruptive to the classes and research that's happening on the Danforth campus. And then Otto's here, and you can thank me for this. Otto, he did not pay me to put this in here. I also just want to highlight we're 2 weeks away from the very important election for our country. And our students are really grappling with a lot of issues, and they're going to be grappling with them for the next 2 weeks, and they're going to be grappling with them hopefully for a little more than 2 weeks after the election. And we have a number of programs and resources on campus that are designed to help students think about how they want to get engaged civically, what their values are, and how to productively engage in the important issues that are important to them. And I just want to plug this as a really important source for those that are working with students. And then the last thing I'll talk about, and then John and I can answer questions, is the role that all of you play. And I don't know everybody here, but looking around the room, I see people who do lots of different work for the university. Some of you are very involved with students. Some of you are not as involved as much as the dean of students. I wake up every morning and all I think about is students. And so I need to remember that's not everybody here on the Danforth campus. But how do you support student advocacy? Because I do think student advocacy is an important part of the college experience at WashU. And some people are more comfortable with it than others, and it's okay for students who are not interested in that. But I think it's better for us as a university and as a community when our students are willing to challenge things that are happening on our campus and in the world around them. I think that makes them better democratically engaged citizens after WashU. So what can you do to help our students? First of all, make sure that they understand our policies. I've given you the links to the 2 most important policies that we have out there. I remember this very much. You mentioned the Ferguson protest, but I remember this very much on our campus after Mike Brown was shot in 2014. We had a lot of students engaging in activism in Ferguson. And I remember how important it was for us to be able to talk to those students before, during, and after their engagement in those, just about what they were going through, how they were experiencing that, with the support they needed. And if you remember, if you were on our campus at that time, there was also a lot of students who were really upset with the students that were protesting in Ferguson. And so we needed to figure out how to be available and supportive to those members of our community as well. Knowing the resources that are available for students, WashU Cares is, well, Missy's sitting over here and Krishan, but WashU Cares is an important department that we have in student affairs that's there to help students with any number of issues that they're going through. We have counseling resources on campus, and we certainly have WUPD if students have questions about about legal issues on campus and off campus. I did get a question before coming to this, talking about, well, protests make me nervous. What do I do if I see a protest and I feel unsafe in my office? First of all, what I want to say about that, I've never felt unsafe at a protest. Maybe one small exception on April 27th, which I'm happy to answer questions about. But for the most part, all those pictures of protests that I showed you, those are all, people might be angry, people might be excited, but most times on our campus, the protests that we see here at WashU are, students just wanting to have a voice in whatever it is the issue that is happening to them. So I would say, first and foremost, if you're able to do your work and not have the activism happening on Mudfield or in the quad bother you, let's encourage that to happen. If you do see something that would be a violation of university policy, certainly notify university police. And the other thing I just have to say is that we've seen this a lot this last year, but always with student activism, sometimes people are protesting things that we as citizens of this campus vehemently disagree with. We have a different opinion on. And that's okay. That's your right, and I respect you for that. You need to think about, with your supervisor, are you comfortable being in the work environment if there's a protest going on near you about this? And I would hope that most supervisors will be willing to make accommodation to your work schedule or your work location if that ever happened. So I think with that, I'm just going to flip it to questions because there is food.
Okay, one second,
and there's
please.
a QR code for questions. Was I supposed to say that?
Yeah.
Oh, there's a lot. They're all for John.
Okay, this question is for John. What is your recommendation of engaging with a disagreement that has to do with substantial differences in fundamental values?
Yeah, so which is a lot of our big disagreements. So I think maybe going back first to this idea of counting the costs, you can only have so many real relationships in your life. So the social media stuff doesn't count as real relationships for the most part, right? There are examples of real relationships online, but lots of our political back and forth is not that. So get offline and commit to someone and build that relationship of trust. And you might find at the end of the day, it's just not worth it if you can't do it. If the disagreement is so fundamental where you're just exhausted. But one of the things I encounter with a lot of students is you will hear things, and I'm actually glad, Rob, that you brought up that point of safety at the end. We hear students sometimes say, this makes me feel unsafe. And what I want to know is, does this make you feel like, do you feel physically unsafe in the moment, or are you uncomfortable? Because the safety word has become a charged word that over-describes the situation. Another one is, your position is denying my humanity. Well, I'm not always sure about that claim. Like, I want to know what's the position being argued, and can we find nuance in really hard cases where people disagree about fundamental matters? Now, this is sort of an individual decision. You might personally say, I just can't engage on that issue or with that person, and that's okay, though. It's a big world out there. But I think in the first instance, sort of go deep and ask yourself, am I over-describing the situation, or can I take some risks here and look for nuance in the disagreement that we have?
All right, another question for John. Do you have advice for how to use the approaches you talked about in our online/remote work environment?
Oh, yeah. I definitely understand the upsides to online remote work, but it really cuts against some of the trust building that you need to. So I would say don't try to have these conversations online. I mean, if you are in a work environment that for whatever reason has become fully remote, I would first find ways to get in person with people. Maybe that's in a distanced environment, maybe it's outdoor, maybe it's only once in a while, but connect with the human beings in person first. It's very hard to do this online. And then the other thing I would just say as a best practice is try to give people the benefit of the doubt with things like tone and other dimensions of online communication. We tend to give our side extreme deference and the other side no deference. And communication is hard in general. It's even harder online when you remove the 3D pieces of it. So try to give a little charitable reading of online exchanges.
Okay. So this party asks, John, do you see any benefits to me openly disagreeing with my colleagues when they're discussing politics, or when they make a political comment I disagree with? So far, I've just stayed quiet.
Yeah, so this is hard. I mean, by the way, I'll welcome any questions from Rob sometime, or for Rob. I think the first step here is understand, like, what is the purpose of this institution, and what is the purpose of your office or your role in this institution. And you might actually find yourself concluding, my day job is not to talk about politics. I mean, sometimes, the workplace is complex. We spend a lot of time here. We get to know people, and sometimes it's okay to have those conversations. But there might be other times where you're saying, you know what, actually, my job here is to be the best whatever I am. And because this institution has hired me, and they've also hired this person whose politics are the opposite of mine, but the university has said both of us belong here, then that's sort of what I'm stuck with. And whatever we might feel out there in the world and the community, we have to, this is sort of the limits question, we have to set those aside and say, I've chosen to work here with this diverse range of viewpoints, and if I can't sign up for that, then this probably isn't the place for me. WashU, by its definition, is supposed to be this inherently pluralistic environment where we have lots of deep differences that matter. We're not homogenous about our values or our identity as an institution, and that there are upsides to that, but there are also costs to that, and some of those costs come with a recognition of having to tolerate the differences around us.
Thank you. Now we have some questions for Rob. Ask and you shall receive. The first one is, how can staff find out information about planned protests?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we don't usually, well, first of all, the direct answer is just go to the internet, because it's all, our students usually talk about it there. So the university doesn't really promote when we know about protests. We have, for many years, had a group called the Demonstrations and Disruptions Team that Student Affairs facilitates. In fact, there's a couple people in the room who are part of that team, who, when we learn of a protest, will ask for volunteers to come staff it. The whole goal of that is to make sure that if there is a potential violation of the policy, that the police department isn't the first one to speak to the students or the protesters. So I'm kind of not answering your question. I also think there are times where we know of demonstrations that are related to events that are happening on campus. So a speaker is coming, or I wish we had known about this protest in advance, but we didn't. But if we knew people were going to protest an admissions event, we'll obviously be working with event organizers to come up with a contingency plan in the event that there is a protest. The last thing I just want to say about it, this question came up a few times, because I think there was a Friday in May where the schools on the East End sent employees home early because there was online information about a demonstration that was happening on the East End of campus. From time to time, that is going to happen. I wish I could tell you that most activists planned, 3 weeks in advance and filled out all the paperwork and told you where they were going to be and what they were going to do. We don't always know that, and so sometimes the university will make decisions to notify, okay, we know of something happening in this building. If you can work from home this afternoon, we encourage you to do that. But that's going to be very case by case and situation dependent.
Thank you. We have sort of a follow-up to part of what you just spoke about in the answer in your previous question. I know you may not be able to answer this, but I feel like it's worth asking anyway. So someone wrote in, staff have been put in increasingly difficult situations or positions of serving in the Disruptions and Demonstration Committee, sometimes even being assigned or voluntold to serve on these committees, especially during commencement. What rights do staff members have in declining to serve as that enforcement when they feel the role would be better served by people trained in conflict resolution and or the WashU PD?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And what I tell people who sign up for the Demonstrations and Disruptions team, don't sign up for a protest if you're not comfortable being a de-escalator, because that's what is the skill that's required to do this. And de-escalation is not as stressful as it sounds. I mean, de-escalation is just having a calm conversation with organizers, developing a little trust, trying to kind of understand what their needs are and doing some active listening. We always tell people on the Demonstrations and Disruptions team, don't sign up for we always tell so if we put out a call for the Demonstrations and Disruptions team throughout the year, we always say what the protest is about. So if the protest is about the physics department and you're an employee of the physics department, you might not want to sign up for that one, because we don't want you to be in a situation where things get escalated. What happened last year at commencement, I hope we'll never see again. That was a sort of a panicky 2 weeks that the university experienced about all of our commencement activities. And I am sorry, I know a lot of people were put into positions where schools and programs were asking people to volunteer and probably sat through trainings that I did on demonstrations and reading the script. I would just encourage you to always follow up with your supervisor if you're feeling you're being asked to do things that are emotionally difficult for you, and just talk about that so your supervisor is aware for the future.
Okay, this question is for John. Is there any effective way to communicate when your disagreement is with someone with greater authority who speaks in bad faith?
That's a good one. So I'm grateful for the question, because it reminds me, I think one of the things about all of these civic principles, I mean, sometimes the whole civil discourse thing is just a ruse to keep the people in power, or to shut down the people who would like things to change. So you do have to be careful about that. And I tend to think that these principals ought to operate asymmetrically. So if you are in a position of relative power, it should be more incumbent on you to listen well, to empathize, to understand, to be patient, to take some hits. Now, if you are in the opposite role and that person's not doing that, then I think that's one, I would say, bad leadership and bad supervision, because they're not taking my advice here and they're not trying to implement this. But sometimes it may actually be, depending on who the person is. I mean, when you get the bad faith actor, there's very little you can do about it other than try to find a different job or hope that they go away. But sometimes maybe bad faith could just be a blind spot, and maybe it's a lack of recognition about the power dynamic in play. I mean, I've been in situations where people have had to remind me about the power differential, and then I kind of think, oh, I had not realized that in this particular committee meeting or this dynamic that there was this experience of this power differential. So sometimes it's exposing a blind spot, but other times it's needing to find a plan B if the person really is acting in bad faith.
Okay, our final question is for Rob. How can staff show support to student causes and still feel confident in their job security?
Oh, an easy one? Boy, that is a great question. I have been a staff member here for 26 years. And my friend Leah Merrifield, I don't know if any of you know Leah, when we worked together in Brookings, she just used to always remind me when I would talk about things that I was upset about, that I really wanted to get behind the students on. She would say to me, Rob, we're at-will employees. That's all she would say, and then she'd leave my office, which is always a nice reminder that I think most of us, except for my colleague to the right, don't have guaranteed employment at the university, and we always need to be thoughtful about what it is, how we choose to engage in things, because, as Leah used to remind me, we're at-will employees. Now, having said that, what I really appreciated about John's talk before me was the theme about building trust and relationship. And I think we've missed that a little bit in the last 3 years. I don't know whether to blame COVID or the political environment or what, but I like to think that if you are able to, with the supervisors in your area, establish a level of trust that they understand your values and you understand the expectations of you, and there is that level of trust, it is possible to have a conversation about you being out at a demonstration with showing support for our students. But I think you have to do that with that level of trust with your supervisor. I will say one of the funny things, or not so funny things, about being on the demonstrations and disruptions team, we're always looking for members. So I'm recruiting here, but sometimes it doesn't happen to me anymore now that I'm dean of students, but I used to go to demonstrations. Actually, this happened to me a lot during Ferguson, where I'd be asked to go out and march around and just kind of be with our students. And I actually kind of loved it because I totally agreed with what they were doing. And I would, I remember one night they went down and they blocked the intersection at Forsyth and Skinker, and I'm down there in my duty on the demonstrations and disruptions team, and a senior member of the arts and sciences faculty who was there protesting with the students came up to me and high-fived me and said, "Thanks for being here." And I was like, I don't think she means on the demonstrations and disruptions team. So anyways, I share that anecdote that, as a recruitment. If you really want to come to demonstrations and show your support, do so on the demonstrations and disruptions team. It's a great way as a staff member to be able to be visible and with our students. And there are times that I feel comfortable at demonstrations telling students, I agree with you. We had a demonstration related to women's healthcare in Missouri, and I totally agreed with what the students were protesting, and I talked to the organizers about that. So anyways, I've rambled on too long, and we're waiting for our reception. So thank you.
Thank you. We weren't able to get to everyone's questions, but we're sorry we ran out of time.
Right. All questions that were submitted will be answered. So I want to thank you. Reception will be at 4. We do have one little closing part, and then we will head outside to the reception. Next, I want Otto Brown to come on up, and we're going to talk about WashU Care, or WashU Votes, not WashU Cares. So it's WashU everything. WashU Votes very quickly.
Hi, everyone. Great opportunity to follow these two great speakers and talk a little bit about how to get involved, how to vote, how to turn out to vote. As Mandy mentioned, 14 days to go until the election, and early voting in Missouri started this morning. So you can get out there after work or this weekend, next week as well, to really get out the vote. Wanted to highlight some resources. Vote.washu.edu is a great one-stop shop for any resources that you're looking for along the lines of voter registration, voter education, and voter turnout. All of the information that's up there is nonpartisan, as is the university, of course. So really just highlighting that. Also wanted to share that we have 2 polling places that the university will be hosting. One in the AC for St. Louis County voters on November 5th from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. And for the first time in university history, we'll be hosting a St. Louis City polling place on the medical campus for our colleagues over there. So really excited to be offering that for our folks over there who have longer shifts and might be working from 7 to 7, but they can still get in and have that opportunity to vote. And then I'll just highlight a few more things here. So make sure that you're making a voting plan, getting through all of your voting resources. If you didn't know, it's the longest ballot in St. Louis County history. If you live in Kirkwood, you win. There are 46 things on your ballot. If you live in St. Louis City, there are 41 things on your ballot. So the reason that we're talking about this now is look up your sample ballot. Visit ballotpedia.org. Visit the League of Women Voters, vote411.org. Fill out your sample ballot. It's not a closed book exam. You can bring that in with you and encourage your students to do the same, right? The first time you go into the polling place should not be the first time that you're seeing your ballot. The other thing I want to highlight that's not talked about very often because judges in Missouri cannot campaign, but in Missouri we vote to retain judges. So there are a lot of judges on the ballot, and you can find information about them at yourmissouriJudges.org. That's compiled by the Missouri Bar Association and is also a nonpartisan resource. We'll have some literature cards and business cards outside if you have additional questions or things that you'd like to bring back to your students and colleagues. And with that, I'll hand it back.
Thanks so much, Otto, for keeping us informed about the election. And thank you all so much for joining us today. I'm Haley Delosic, and I'm co-chair of the DSC. I'm the yin to Mandy's yang. I'm here to wrap up with a few final notes. As you just heard, the election is coming, and we want to encourage you to make a plan. So for us, what that means is we're encouraging you to start conversations, if you haven't already, some of you may be ahead of the game, with your teams about meeting times, about needs for flexibility, and how to use your WashU voting time policy as you're able. And don't hesitate to reach out to employee relations for additional support. Basically, you have guaranteed voting time as part of your workday based on WashU's HR policy. Make sure you're talking through what that means in your department with your teams, because as we all know, things happen very differently in different corners of this university, and we want to make sure that you are getting what you need to get to the polls. Additionally, we've so enjoyed having time with you today. We would love to connect more. And so we have 3 upcoming opportunities where you can connect on a more one-on-one or small group setting with members of the Danforth Staff Council. And you can learn more about what we do and tell us more about what you're thinking, because we're here to advocate for you. And so we want to make sure that we're getting perspectives from a variety of individuals. The first opportunity is tomorrow, so no need to wait. And you can find us in Edison Courtyard at the Leadership Expo as part of Leadership Week. And then in November, we're going to head over to the Arts and Sciences College office. We'll be right outside of that in that atrium, and we'll have some breakfast treats. And we'll just be doing a meet and greet. So that'll be at 8:30 in the morning. Might seem early to some departments and late to others. We're trying to strike a balance. So 8:30 is when we settled on. But you can come and you can talk to different DSC members, have a breakfast bagel, and go on about your day. No major commitments, but you can get some questions answered. And much like the questions we received today, we actually maintain a database of questions that we take to different parts of the university. And then we get answers on it so that we can share that information. So if you feel like you really want to talk about something in specific detail and make sure we understand your question, that's an opportunity to do that too. Last but not least, during reading week, which I understand is a terrible time for some of you and the best time for others of you to get together, we're trying, we encourage you to join us for a virtual networking meet and greet. So we're going to have you meet both Danforth Staff Council members and each other. So you'll have an opportunity to meet people from across campus and connect. And I have a date, I swear, it's during reading week. It's the Tuesday.
The 10th.
It's the 10th specifically, December 10th. And that'll happen on Zoom. All right, and we just want to see you guys more. So come hang out with us. Finally, don't forget, open enrollment is coming up. I know we didn't get to talk about HR benefits at all today, really, and it's a real disappointment for some of you at the DSC staff forum. Wasn't about more benefits, don't worry, we'll get back to it. But for today, our partners in HR want to really make sure that you are getting the best benefits for you, so pay attention to re-enroll and update as you need to for your changing life circumstances. As Mandy pointed out, you can visit our website anytime. We also send out a monthly newsletter, so you'll be hearing from us. And thanks for being here and online and in person. This is a QR code that'll allow you to take a survey about today and let us know what you thought of this forum and make suggestions for what's to come. But for my in-person audience, it also asks you questions about the reception that is about to start. So know that I'll also be emailing you a link, so you don't take that where you will. Okay. And then also in the back here in person, we have a what would you like to discuss at the Spring Forum board? And we'd love if you'd fill out a Post-it note and share with us topics that would really interest you. Let me see. For those here in person, the reception will begin as you exit. Thanks again for joining us today. We were so glad to have you with us. Take care.
I just want to thank everybody for being here, our presenters, everybody in person, everybody online. Let's manja, have some meet and greet time. We are all available by email, phone, text, whatever, at all times. And we want more members, so please think about applying for the DSC in late February.